Good morning, Easton and beyond. My name is Marie Nuttall, and we are celebrating Plein Air Easton, a 10-day celebration of art and all things art-related. Today, I took a few moments to consider how I would introduce our artist that is going to be giving a demo today, and it occurred to me that she is the only person to hold every role in Plein Air Easton over 21 years. She is a visionary. She is a founder. She's a volunteer somewhere over the years.
First 3 years.
First 3 years. She was a juried artist. She is a Plein Air Easton alumni. She's been a donor, a juror, a judge, and today she's going to teach us in our demo this morning, Nancy Tankersley. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. Thanks. Well, it's interesting that my roles do seem to change every year, and actually that's really good for me because I'm a person who likes change. And she knows, she's studied with me before. I am not an artist that falls into my comfort zone and likes to stay there. I am constantly trying to learn, push myself. And so I'm going to do something a little chancy today. But first, a little marketing. I have some brochures up here. Feel free to pick them up. And this middle one lists the classes I have next year and also talks about the 2 videos that are available through PaintTube TV online. They just had a big half-price sale. It was over last night. I hope those of you on Facebook knew about it. So, and then I have a studio here in town. There's a bright pink door near La Bodega, and I'm going to be open on Friday for anybody that wants to come by and have a ice cold drink and get out of the heat and see my working space. So you're welcome between 11 and 5. So, and the map where I am is on the back, along with the address. So, okay, well today I'm gonna do a favorite scene, and any of you that are local, who's not local? Okay, and have you ever been here before? Well, maybe you've seen these wonderful structures, which are now gone. There used to be at the end of Brooklet Street a whole string of farm silos, granaries. Purdue had a processing plant there, and it was demolished this past spring. It's all cleared out now, and they're going to put in a multi-use development there with living spaces and commercial spaces and stuff. And I'm not opposed to progress, and I know things have to change, but this was tragic for the artist, really tragic. Nowhere did you have such an easily accessible collection of shapes that any time of the day would have different interesting shadows. You could make a lifetime career of painting these granaries up on Brooklet Street, but they're gone. So anyhow, today I am going to pay homage to them, do my probably one of the last, I may still paint them from photographs, but we'll never be able to paint them plein air again. And this one is, Nick, can you do the first painting? Just wanted to quickly show you. That was the first one I did of those, part of that section. That actually won me second place in 2013 or 14, I think. It was kind of a breakthrough for me because I hadn't done any of these industrial type paintings. And can we see the next one? Nick? That's another one that's a little further down. That was the last one I did, which is going to be similar to what I'm doing today. This was called King of the Hill, and I think that won Best Architecture. So it was interesting. Every time I did a scene from Brooklets, I got an award, which makes me think I should have been doing it every year, but I didn't. But I'm going to do it now. And I'm going to do a similar scene to that, but I'm going to do a distant view. And why am I doing a distant view? Well, it just kind of goes with the theme of vanishing, going away. It's a memory. I'm going to hopefully be a little bit more abstract with this. Not, I want it recognizable, but I want to be able to put some things into it that kind of express my feeling about these buildings, these shapes going away. So last night, or 2 nights ago, I printed out these, and I did 4 what we call studies, just to see which I like best. I don't generally do that when I'm doing plein air painting because I'm always in a hurry, but it's a good idea. It's a good idea to do little sketches and see which one works best for you. I went with, at first I was going to do a square, and then I decided, the distant view works so much better as a rectangle, so I went with the rectangle. And I'm going to be doing somewhere between these two. And if you see, this presents me with a great big dark shape at the bottom of the painting, and I'm going to have to deal with that in an interesting way. So that will probably be more about the demo tomorrow. So today it's going to be more about setting up my painting. And please feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions, because I'm perfectly comfortable stopping and answering your questions. So when you have them, ask them. So you may notice that I have drawn all these crazy lines here. Well, this is something fairly new for me. It's not something I did until maybe the last couple of years, and I do it often in the studio. And it's called setting up my painting according to the principles of dynamic symmetry. So who has heard of that? Anybody? Because I've talked about it. I learned this, of course, from another artist that I greatly respect. And it is a way of helping make design choices. Often when we're painting plein air, it's like, well, where should that cloud end? What's the best place to end that cloud? Or what's the best place to place that boat? Or how can I make this more interesting? If you go back a little bit in art history, in the beginning of sculpture and painting, symmetry was static. Not symmetry, but design was mostly, it was static. And you'll notice in the early sculptures, Greek sculptures, Roman sculptures, the figures didn't have a whole lot of movement. And then as things progressed, especially among the great Greeks, the sculptures started to have more and more design elements and more grace, more movement. And art scholars think that this is when the principles of dynamic symmetry were discovered. Now, I'm a real novice at this, so I'm not an expert. I'm just passing on the things that I've learned that have helped me. So anyhow, once they discovered the principles of dynamic symmetry, they started applying it to everything, to sculpture, to painting, to architecture. And the interesting thing about dynamic symmetry is it all goes back to the plant. And I know a lot of you know about the Fibon, Vlad, help me out. What's the Fibonacci spiral? That's part of, design studies. It's about if you take a sunflower and look at the pattern of the seeds, everything starts, and then at a certain point, it enlarges. And then, so I can't get into that because I'll say something really stupid because I don't know enough. But I know enough to know that having a design is so important. Design makes up for a lot of flaws, good design. Color will never make up for poor design. Design, and I've judged a lot of competitions, I've judged a lot of them online where I have to look at these little images, and if the design doesn't capture you as a judge, you're likely not going to go any further with that one. Kind of the same thing here, the ones with strong design are the ones that reel you in. So I can't overemphasize how important design is. Simplifying it, this is a rectangle. So the most important lines in this are the diagonal that goes from one corner to the next. And then the next division that is important is called the reciprocal line. And it's the line that goes from the other corner and intersects this diagonal at a right angle. So in this case, it is here. And that just is the beginning of breaking the rectangle up into interesting shapes. From there, it's kind of, I'm just putting in, I'm doing more diagonals. This has broken up into a, let's see, I'm lost my train of thought, but you start breaking it up into squares and rectangles, and you find the diagonals of those squares and rectangles. And it is somewhat arbitrary, and the person I learned this from says he always goes out into the field with his canvases already just, divided up like that. And it doesn't mean he's going to use every single line, but it's where the intersections happen where the important points are. And I'm going to try to set this up according to this. That's what I'm saying. Nothing is interesting to me unless there's a chance of failing. And there's a real chance. No, I think I'll do it. I've done it enough now at this point. And then the other thing I'm talking about today, I'm doing a two-part demo because today I'm going to work in acrylic. And why acrylic? Because I discovered early on that I wasn't fast enough to do a big plein air painting in one sitting. Or if I worked on it too long. I like layers. I like layering paint. I like to see little bits of color underneath other, washes of color. And I couldn't do that in a large painting quickly enough. And then I didn't have the ability, the paint wouldn't dry, so I couldn't go over it with a second layer. So then I thought, I'm just going to start with acrylic. And I've been doing that now for about 10 years, starting my large plein air paintings outside in acrylic and then switching to oil. And it may be, if it's a cloudy day and I'm working on it all day, I may just switch to oil, in the middle of the day. If it's a sunny day and I want to have the same light, then I finish an acrylic one day, come back the next day and do my second go at it in oil. And it's a way of saving time. It's like toning a canvas, getting rid of the white, but toning it in big blocks that mimic what your drawing should be like. So that's why I'm going to be working with acrylic. And it has to be the fast-drying acrylic. If any of you are working in acrylics these days, you don't want the slow-drying because sometimes, especially in this humid weather, it could take up to 24 hours to dry. And that's not fast enough for our purposes. So this is one that I did start in acrylic. Spent one morning there doing it in acrylic, went back the next day and did it in oil. So people say, well, what medium is that then? Well, I still consider it oil because it's many oil paintings are painted over acrylic toning, acrylic ground. So it's pretty much the same thing. The other important thing to know is that you have to have a canvas that is gessoed with a universal gesso. Because if you use a, all right, I didn't bring my yellow. Oh well, I have a different yellow. If you use a oil-primed canvas, it may not stick. The acrylic may eventually lift from it. So if you're going to use this technique, you have to have a universal primed canvas. So I'm just laying out my primary colors. A yellow, a red, a blue, I'm also going to put well, maybe I'm not. I'm just going to stick with that one blue. We'll keep it simple. And then maybe a little bit of black, just if I need it for darks, put it over here. This is a spray bottle of alcohol, and I'll show you how I use that as I get further along. I have these little things to help if I need. Alcohol basically erases acrylic. When it's still wet, you can lift the acrylic off. So if I need to lift it off, that's what that's for. And my most recent Plein Air Easton apron, which is quite a few years old, but it's the cleanest I have. I have a whole bunch of Plein Air Easton aprons, but they're pretty bad. So, okay. All right, and then water. Now, it is a bit of a pain to have to carry 2 kits out into the field with you, but I think the payoff is worth it. So, and these days, I don't stray too far from my car anyhow. So it's pretty easy to get there. Okay, so the first thing I need to figure out is what is the biggest shape there? It's that white edge of the building, and where is that going to be? Well, gosh, it's so logical. Look at that. I've got this nice triangle there already set up. So let me just try it and see if this is going to work. I'll show you that. And I want this to be this small because I want to give a suggestion of the neighborhood that's going away. And I don't see it in this photograph, but I know they're there. There are little tiny houses, maybe even littler, that I guess at one time workers lived there that worked in, when it was, across the street from all this is also a big factory building. So I'm assuming at one time it was a very vibrant factory area in Easton. And then there are all these little houses over there. Okay. That gives me that. There actually is a, it's part of the grain elevator. It used to, grain was stored over here, and then it would come across this long, thin thing here and be processed, I think. Does anybody know better than me? This is what I think happened. I know that I used to live a couple of blocks away, and when the grain was being processed, we would hear it and smell it. And that was interesting to live that close to where your food is processed. I had a friend from Philadelphia, a pretty well-known painter named Stuart Schills, who was gone in, he's gone more abstract, but he came here and taught a workshop, and he was just blown away by the silos. He said, you know, so rare, you just don't see equipment like that up close. And most towns, it's, you know, it's hidden, it's far away. And so it was a real treat to be able to paint that. Okay. The rails or trails are still there. They go right through here. And this thing is still here too. And the reason it has been left hanging in the air like there is two supports, it's going to be the kind of the icon. It's just their nod to history, the developers. That's the one thing they've left, is that thing there. And I am not bad-mouthing developers. I'm just sad that it had to happen, but you know, it's just the way it is. So the first thing I do is, even though I don't really pay attention to value at this stage, I'm really paying more attention to shape and making sure that the silhouette of this whole complex is right. I'm butting up this structure right there, right up against the center line. Is it that important? Maybe not, but subconsciously it may be. You know, it may just give you a sense of it being in the right place by taking advantage of these lines. Okay, all right, I want this to come down a little bit more. And then there is. I'm going to go ahead and make it summer, just in keeping with Plein Air Easton. But you see how these trees now follow this diagonal line. Okay, now my next decision is, how far up do I take that shadow? And I like the idea of having some light, a light band across there. So I'm going to take it up to this line, which is one of the intersection lines here. bring it. And it's a, it's a building behind me that is being, casting a shadow. All right, so I feel like that's a fairly good shadow shape. It's not boring, it's not static, it has some interest to it. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so what happens here is then we have a line of concrete. Yeah, there was like a gravel line, and then there was just different textures, different surfaces. This is gravel. This is the concrete. I'm just going around lines that are already here. The concrete maybe goes down to about here, which follows these lines, and then the rest is asphalt. And my challenge is going to be, how do I make that interesting? And that's going to be all about subtleties. And I'm going to try to suggest some of those houses that are there. I may have to go back today and take another look at them, but I just like the idea of them. I don't think I've got this. So let me go ahead and block in the shadow color. Gravel. This is. All right, now I am thinking about values. I'm going to go back in and try to lift some of the light areas. It's just rubbing alcohol, yeah. It works better. The water doesn't lift it quite as well. I got my drawings a little wonky here, so This was an old deserted building for many years where a bunch of feral cats lived. And one of the artists that had a studio in the Brooklets building, which is the other side, used to feed them. And I think he still goes there, but we don't know what have happened to the cats. I think there's a few of them left. For those of you that have been following Plein Air Easton for a long time, you might remember that Stuart White won first place, I think the second year, with a painting from this area. So it's a loss to the artist. There's no doubt about that. All right, I think what's going to save this painting is how I handle the shadow in the foreground, if it's savable. It's going to be fairly easy to get the suggestion of the buildings back here. All right, now I'm going to go back in and take another look and actually spend some time with my drawing here. And I'm going to take this off so that I can, if I were out in plein air, I'd be doing my measuring with a paintbrush, just holding it up in the air, looking at it like that. Now I'm going to be doing my measuring, looking at this. So one thing I want to make sure is I want to see if the roof, the sides of the roof on the white building are the same, and they are. So I got to get that right. I have to go back and make sure if this is how long this is, and this is how long this is, and I'm off. Which means everything would have to move over, so I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller. Let's see if that works. There. All right. So now I'm going to start blocking in the underpainting. So what the colors I use are not as important as the value. So I'm just going to pick colors that match the value that I ultimately see there. So I'm going to start with now I'm going to make it more colorful than it's going to end up. Tomorrow when I go back with oil, I know that I'll be lightening this building considerably, but for now, this is a good color. To laugh. I taught a workshop this weekend. I kept saying, don't grab your brushes up here. What have I been doing? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, learn better than I did. So I'm just looking for my darks now. I'll get a little bit lighter on this dark here. You want to be sure that you don't have, you don't build the acrylic up thick. You want to keep it thin so there are no ridges. Who asked that? You did. Is there anything that calls me to paint one over another? No, it's usually me just convenience. You know, I'm using acrylic now because I know it will speed the process up to allow me to paint the way I like to paint with oils. I do use open acrylics, which is a slower drying acrylic when I'm traveling, and I do that because it's easy, you know. You don't have to carry solvent and stuff like that, and everything dries fast. But I still don't love the texture you get with acrylic of any type. I love oil, but you know, there's just sometimes it's worth sacrificing that just for the convenience of working with a water-based medium. Now, I just put this here, I guess. I could paint the sky blue, and that would save me a lot of time in applying blue paint tomorrow. But I also sometimes like to have a different color showing through. So I'm going to go with a warm pink for the sky right now. Oh, there I go again, hugging my brush. I'm trying to introduce the different surfaces. So there is there's gravel, there's actually a very light, I need some more white, a very light patch of grass in front of the white building that I want to make sure that I capture. probably paint that fly in. The one that's on the advertisement, I don't remember the landscape that you saw. I did that out on Dover Road. It had so many tiny little flies in it. When I brought it back, I decided to just leave them, and they actually worked. Okay, so this is all, I gotta not get confused. This is all asphalt here. This is the street. This is a patch of concrete that's all broken up, and that'll be interesting to get some texture. This here is the gravel. And then that's the grass up there. I'm gonna get that a little bit lighter so I remember to keep it. Got to get these little shapes right now, or if I start trying to make all the corrections with oil paint, it'll get really messy. So it's not, I mean, I'm not trying to get detail, I'm just trying to get the relationships of the size of the shapes correct. I noticed that I had gotten too tall with those, this part, and they didn't sit back right, so I made some adjustments. this out. That's not. Okay, so there's some interesting little shapes back here that I'm going to really exaggerate. Let me finish the sky first, though. This is all part of the planning. Got messy. An exaggeration. I'm a great fan of exaggeration. I think if you paint it exactly how you think you see it, it's probably not going to be very interesting. And I've found when I exaggerate something, it looks more real. Don't know why, but it does. It's something that happens between our eyes and our brain, I think. So, so I'm always looking for ways to exaggerate. And I see a blue building back there. It's hung on the side of one of the silos. I guess it was an office or something. And I'm going to make sure that it pops. And I may, probably when I do my oils, I'm going to use a different blue, but for now I'm going to just put a mark there to remind myself that that blue is there. And then, I'm getting very basic here. There's a wonderful red streak that catches the light. And that's going to be, it's going to really take your eye in there. And then there is a square kind of over here at the end of this that I don't know what it is. I'm going to put it right on this line, this vertical line that drops down from there. That seems a good place to put it. There's some little bits of light back here. It's buildings back there coming through the trees. Gotta get those, there's a red roof. They're very faded, but I'm going to remind myself to pop them a little bit more. Not as much as that one. Okay. I didn't get my tools that I needed. Well, let's see if I can do it this way. I want to just draw straight lines. I'm just going to have to wing it. So let's remember that this comes out from here. And it actually crosses in front of that dark. So that makes a wonderful design element. You know, it really balances, ties things together. Just like what's going to happen here. I'm probably exaggerating this, taking it all the way off the top rather than stopping it short. Okay. And then I need to have some balance over here, and I am going to figure out where those houses fit. And this is all just little abstract shapes that, because I'm going to spend a lot of time painting that carefully, your brain fills in the rest. You know that those are structures, town structures, things that belong there. I'm probably, and I don't know if you can see in the photograph. Oh, he didn't switch. Okay, you're still looking at, man, I've been looking at this the whole time, and I could be looking up there. You see all those birds? Now, that doesn't happen in the summer. They come when the grain comes, and they stay until they've picked up every bit of grain off the ground, and it's pretty scary. Boy, you walk by there on a gray, gloomy day, and you see all those birds up there. But they make great design elements. So I'm going to probably put a few of them in. And I think if I do, they're going to go somewhere along these diagonals. There are little diagonals here that intersect and I think will help. And then maybe a few, I don't want to make it all about the birds, but they're nice little marks that take you around the painting. I mean, there's a bunch down there on the ground. There's also some nice little dark pieces there. If I could do it, I'd put one of those cats. That's getting a little small. I don't think that, that's getting a little bit too precious. But, okay, and then the other thing I'm going to make sure that I do is I have some, I can see here, I have some concrete lines that are going to help you, lead you into the, yeah, they don't really go along any of my dynamic symmetry lines, but that's okay. Okay, there, and then there's a line that goes through here. I'll remember I want to divide this big shape up. That's why I'm making notes to myself to remember that this all gets divided up horizontally. And I could, depends on how much time I have, end up, I think the bike path actually runs right about here. I could end up putting some small figures in there for scale, just so that you got a feel for how big these structures are. And it goes like that. Okay, at this point, I would probably pull out my oils, but since I don't want to do that today, I'm going to try a few things using the acrylic and see if I can get some interesting effects that can stay there. All right, so let's just I do this a lot. I do a lot of paintings of watermen and water, and I'll do this a lot to try to get some dribs and drabs, but it's really not working. I don't know why. Ah, there it is, starting to pull off. I don't want to do that. Tell you what, I'm going to show you, for those of you that won't be here tomorrow, I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use and will be using tomorrow. I just have to get it out of here. No. No, that's why I decided to do it in 2 days. And some of it is dry. You know, I could probably go up and do the sky now. But let me show you a few things that I have in my toolbox. So these are my oils that I'll be working with tomorrow. Looks like I'm ready to spackle a wall, doesn't it? Okay, these are all things I've collected in my quest to make more interesting marks on my paintings. And this is one that helps me with straight lines. So for instance, if I wanted to go, and it's harder with the acrylic because it dries fast, but say if I wanted to make sure this was a really hard straight line, that does that. I want to emphasize the ground plane. I go back there. It's just quick, and it's hard to do with a brush. Hard to keep those lines quite so straight. So they're all different sizes so that I can use them for different length. I can straighten these lines out here. I'll make sure that I don't leave too much acrylic there. Yeah. There. This is a wonderful tool that I can drag. You see the marks it's making there? This is called a potter's rib, and it's used by potters, I guess. I've never done pottery, but it's great for dragging the paint and making interesting marks, kind of glazing. So I'm just trying to get some interesting effects that may or may not show through when I am ready to put my oil on. And this I use oil with mostly, but you see that? It's really fun. And it makes straight edges nicely. Huh? It is. It's a soft plastic. You can get them on Amazon. Oops. And it's backwards. Can you hear me? Yeah. You get them on Amazon, and just make sure you get the red ones. The other ones are either too soft or too hard. I find that these are the best. These are great. I've used these so many times for like marsh scenes. You know, I can do these nice little shapes like this. Can you see that? And it's so much quicker than, there, I think I got it.
Yeah.
I get it, okay. It's so much quicker than a brush. And it makes a variety of shapes and textures. So I'll be using this a lot tomorrow, and I can actually go back and do a little bit. It's called a potter's rib, rib, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to do that. That'll get me too confused, but let's see if I can get a little bit more interesting color here for a underpainting. It's a little, well, actually, probably is going to be about right, because I want to show the asphalt in sunlight as well as in shadow. It might be a little dark, but a little dark's good. So I'll end up lightening it up with my oil tomorrow. And then the last thing I haven't showed you is this. If I needed to really get in here and I just sprayed myself. Lift some lines. I can do it with this. Let's see. That makes a nice straight, you know, hard edge. I'm using these little Q-tips, but they're apparently made for makeup, and they've got a little round thing on the end and a point on the top, and they're real useful. Okay, well, let me see if I can get a little bit of these that suggested. The tops of the, gotta get that right. The tops of the silos here. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so right now I'm just really correcting my drawing, thinking what else I could do. Yeah, I could stop. Actually, I just discovered something I like, though. I'm taking, these, that's kind of interesting, and who knows what, I may end up letting some of that show, or trying it with oils. So I guess, one of the things I'm trying to share with you is start with a good design, start with a good foundation, start with a good drawing, and then have fun with your paint application. But always go back to that strong design, that strong foundation. At least that's what I try to do. Let's see. I feel like I haven't quite got the shape of that building in front, and that's something I may fool around with. How important is it? I don't know. It's not that important for the whole scene, but having been a portrait painter, I like to get exact. Not always successful. And sometimes I do exaggerate buildings, perspective, just for interest. So I think that's all I'm going to do today. And I hope that you can come back tomorrow, because that's when the real fun part of it begins. Yeah, I'll leave it here. Well, I mean, it's going to be different tomorrow. But, I'll leave it here. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not totally happy with the shadow shape. I'm thinking it might be better off to be a little bit more geometric with the shape, but I don't know. That's something that, it takes a fresh eye, and that's another reason this is a good way to approach a larger painting. It's, easily changeable. And I'll come back tomorrow, and if it's wrong, I usually will know right away, once I've stepped back and seen it. But I feel like it's going in the right direction. And I'm pretty happy with the placement. I feel like I need to go take a look at that if I can see it now. Those houses are still there. They haven't been torn down, and get a feel for what I would see if I, would see the whole thing. Anybody have any questions? Have I totally, huh?
I was very curious when you were doing the diagonals and they were meeting, and then there was other ones that started at the top and then you said thinner. How did you?
Okay, basically I started with this diagonal. And then I found the reciprocal line, which is you start on the other, either there or there, and you find where it intersects the diagonal at a right angle. So those, they say, are the most important elements of design. And if you take that diagonal and the reciprocal angle and put it over many masterworks, you'll see that either intuitively or knowingly, the artist has used those design elements. And then from there, let's say, I can't quite see it now, let's say this is the reciprocal line for here, then I would drop a line here, and what I end up is a rectangle and either another rectangle or a square. And then I may do a diagonal of the square, which is what I did. And then a diagonal of this rectangle. and then maybe break this rectangle into a square and do another diagonal. It's all based on rectangles and squares and diagonals. Now, I don't know if, Kevin McPherson does something. Does anybody know? He's a wonderful plein air painter, and he has a whole video. But his is more based on, do you know? Do you remember? It's what? Straighter lines. He doesn't emphasize the diagonals as much. I think diagonals are a really important element in design, and it's something that artists don't pay enough attention to. So, any other questions? No. Well, 10:30 tomorrow. Yep, I'll be here with my oils. Hopefully I can pull it off. Thanks for coming.